All right, guys, welcome in. John Zannis, Bobby Manning. A special Garden Report insert, we'll call it. We've got a post-game show coming up. Celtics taking on the Miami Heat on Wednesday night, but we do want to talk about the news around Robert Williams here and his knee injury, his meniscus tear. He had the surgery, and the reports come out today that it was that partial trim thing that allows you to return early. Everyone's playing Twitter doctor, ourselves included, Bobby, on our text chats, and everyone's out there. So it's a strange thing because it feels like it's a good news thing, and it is for the Celtics. I think there is a level of concern over Rob and his long-term health. Again, we'll talk about it as much as we can understand it. But just your initial reaction to just on the Celtics front, knowing that Rob is coming back or could come back. And the report again from Woj specifically, he's the first person with information on this before the team tweeted a release, was they're optimistic it's on the early side of the 4 to 6 weeks, which would put them really in that second round of the playoffs. So now all of a sudden you're asking Bobby, the team, to survive a round and then hopefully get Rob back. We don't know what version of Rob, if he'll be ready to go, but it's more optimistic for this season than we were, when the news broke of the initial injury.
For sure. And that tweet, I know you guys were talking about on the post-game shows over the last two games there, sort of pointed toward him feeling good about it too, at least in the conversations and probably the assessment of what the injury was. So hopefully we'll hear more about what the surgery was, what the injury was ultimately when they got in there, because that's sort of when they find out what the tear was and the best course of action, because we're sort of caught between two things now, right? It was either a small tear that didn't need a full repair, they just need a little trim, and that was the best course of action, or they couldn't do the full repair, which would obviously be a bigger concern.
Also,
I'm sure we won't know. Yeah.
Option three is the choice. It's the choice of the athlete.
Now, I can't imagine that was it.
Well, no, because some athletes will choose it because here's the thing. Depending on age, depending on what you do, depending on severity, depending on a lot of different things, you might choose it and say, yeah, do the partial, because the doctors will tell you realistically, you're looking at 6, 7, 8, 10, good years before any you have no arthritis in the knee right now. We don't see any early onset arthritis coming in, so maybe you'll be fine. And honestly, if you do experience problems, it's later in life when you're not going to need to be jumping, to the rafters and blocking shots and all of those things. So this is the same thing. Later in life, it might be a little creaky, but you're going to be fine now. That's an option. And some people take that. Some athletes are like, nah, I want it now.
Yeah.
But if repair was an option and repair was the better long-term option and they punted on it, that's something we might be questioning the wisdom of down the road. We don't know now, so it's impossible to say. But it was hard to react to the news for that exact, reason, which is I hope they didn't do this I hope they and Rob didn't do this just to rush back for this season.
Yeah, and it's exciting that he could be back. I think if everybody thought long and hard about it, you'd say, all right, if the option was there, best long-term solution for his knee, you'd go with that route, just because this is with this team they have and him, of course, and the extension. This is more of a 2-3 year plan here with this group going forward. And I know I haven't obviously talked about the injury yet over the last couple of games here, but it's brutal. It's a massive blow to the dominance that they've asserted here, the scheme that they've put in place. I agreed with you that this is almost like the second or third guy that you could have at least afforded to lose here. But I do bump him back to 3, just because you have Al, and Al can hold what you're doing there. And you have Tice, who I think looks all the more important now, and Grant has been playing some good basketball. So you have bodies there. That's the good thing about this situation now, is you can sustain to the point where I think he comes back, depending on how the seeding shakes out right now. You just wonder, how long does it take to get hit the ground running? And, are there setbacks? I think I've looked at a bunch of the past guys who have dealt with this injury here, and it does seem to linger a little longer. So I'm interested. I don't know how you can say now that's the short end. I'm sure that's like the outlook, but you never know how it's actually going to go once he starts getting back on the floor and doing the rehab and all those different things. There's a long way to go, I feel like, before we actually know exactly when he's going to come back here. So
Yeah,
that's another reason. It's like if they get eliminated round one, all of a sudden there's no chance he comes back. So if that option was there to do the full repair, it's almost a no brainer in my
or if he
mind.
comes back, but he comes back at the 5 to 6 week mark and he's 50% of
Yeah.
himself, and what good is he doing even if they are still alive? So again, I have to assume that option one for everyone going in was if repair is at all possible, do it. Again, I don't know. I mean, we won't know. And Rob's a grown man and he can make his own choices. And if he had said, "Yeah, fix it," that's his call, I guess. Personally speaking, as someone who's invested a lot of, you know, energy into Rob Williams, and I really want to see his continued growth, and I want to see what he can become. I personally, I would have been willing to punt on whatever this season brought if you had a better chance of Rob being, close to the full version of himself going forward, and you hope there's no long-term things. Anything is tricky here. That's the scary thing with something like this. You go in and you're reading stuff, and it's like, and this is where things get murky.
It introduces a lot of uncertainty for
It
him.
introduces uncertainty. You don't know how bad other things are in there. You don't know the full recovery. The problem is we're all playing, you know, internet sleuth, internet doctor, and reading studies. A lot of those studies have to do with like regular people, and how they
Yep.
recover. These are superhuman people, and Rob Williams is Superman. So you're hoping that it's a quick recovery and he's still got 6, 7, 8 years of prime Rob, flying all over the place, which would be great. But
And that's
again,
the other
it
thing too here, like his burst, his jumping, that
isn't
athletic ability is so central to who he is.
right.
We saw the entry into there where it was a little stunted for some reason or another, and then he obviously reached back to the level that he was playing at his best a little further into the year here. So you're right. If he comes back unable to leap and finish lobs and get up off the ground and contest shots in a variety of ways, his impact is mitigated a
Lesson.
little bit here.
It's
Yeah.
early season Rob. You're back to that. And again, every athlete and every injury is different. Guy like Kevin Durant, I was dubious coming off an Achilles tear because you look at the history of Achilles tears, and most people do not return anywhere close to their form. But the reason it works for Kevin Durant is it doesn't matter. All he's doing is shooting up and over people. It's not about the burst and getting by people as much as he maybe would have done in the past. He just makes buckets. So even if his athleticism was reduced 10%, 15% off of that Achilles injury, he's almost the same player because he can do all of the same things, for the most part that he was doing before. Rob needs that lift. That's what makes him special. And so you want to make sure he has it when he returns and he has it going forward. So that's always a concern, is now you're white knuckling it to see, like, what does he look like post surgery? Is it the same guy? Can he become the same guy? So
Yeah, no matter the outlook here, the injury is brutal. It came at the worst time. You hit
yeah,
one seed that day. You get this emphatic win over what was the second hottest team in the NBA at the time, and it's all gone. I mean, we're almost starting from scratch here. What are they going to do from a scheme perspective? How are the minutes and rotations going to go? I mean, the next day you get that whole rest lineup up in Toronto, and you're all of a sudden watching G leaguers and just that fall from the top of the sport to almost scratch here. Now listen, I get
but you
it.
had to feel pretty heartened by that, though, considering it was summer league Celtics with Marcus and Derek, and they
It was great, but we were talking championship. I was talking championship. All of a sudden, I'm watching the Bucks last night, and I'm like, without Rob, this is a little tricky now. Like those massive
it is,
expectations or
but
aspirations that they had are kind of gone until you see him back playing at the level he was. Because this is the guy that drove you from, and you see it in the lineup numbers too. Horford, Grant in this new year, it's like +3. That starting lineup was rolling at +24 the whole year. Just unspeakable dominance and 20-point wins over everybody. That's what had me thinking championship. Now the margins are thin. Now you're playing in close fourth quarters again, possession for possession down the stretch like that Dallas game. Have they gotten over that hump? Can they
yeah,
ruin those spots? Like it just introduced a whole lot of questions we had about this team earlier in the year. I mean,
and
how do you even respond mentally from an injury like this as a group?
well,
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, the good news is this. The good news is, without certainty, but with, a fair amount of, confidence right now, you do feel, barring a a totally colossal unforeseen slide that they're finishing into that top 4 bracket, which means that eliminates the
Magic number's 4, so
yeah,
you
which
feel good about it.
eliminates the possibility of Philadelphia, Milwaukee, Miami in round 1, which means you feel pretty good about a first round matchup, even without Rob, though it's much closer than before, right? I know our thinking with Rob Bobby has evolved as time's gone on, as watching this team continue to play, because it was like, okay, can they sustain this against good teams? Then you watch them go out and absolutely destroy good teams with this lineup, and you're thinking, that first round matchup, I don't care who it is, they're going to come out of that one. But now, if you're facing Jared Allen, if you're facing an Evan Mobley, if you're facing different guys, without, it's tougher. That's not assured. That first round matchup is no longer assured. Not that anything ever is, but you felt pretty good about it before. Less so now. I guess the real plus side is I think there was an overall totally deflated feeling, between all of us and everybody in our post game show chats and everybody on Twitter that like, uh, this team had a chance to be special and now it's over. And at least that's rekindled a little bit. So again,
There's a chance,
it
yeah.
adds that hope. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a hope at the end of the second round there, which is about 6 weeks brings you to May 11th. That's roughly the 5, 6, 7 range of that second round there. So then you're
That's
in,
the 6, that's that range. If you are
yeah.
on the early side in
Then you're
the
talking beginning of second
and
round,
you're
right?
talking beginning of second round, which again is a game changer, and a potential series changer. Even if Rob is 80, 85, 90% and able to give you 20 minutes, it changes things. So it does kind of reintroduce that whole thing, and the possibility of them kind of, being that special team that we saw. It's deflating because I mean, you go from, I forget what the span was, but it was 70 days, I believe, where they had dropped down to the 11th seed and were out of the play-in tournament. 70 days later, they rise and end up as the number 1 seed at the end of the day, and on that very same day, they lose Robert Williams. So just weird mixed emotions and a strange weekend for Celtics fans. So I don't know what you're seeing in reactions here. I think people are psyched, but does feel a little bit cautious because everyone is kind of. I think everyone is really concerned, like to make sure that Rob is Rob when he
You worry
returns.
about the long, and we
Yeah,
always have with him. It's always been of course, he was the guy, right? Like, if
yeah,
anyone was gonna go down and it was gonna be that injury, it would have to be him because that's always the question. There's that play that's put him among the great centers this year and makes you go, "Wow, they got him at 27. This is a heist." And then that injury's creeping around the corner that makes you say, "Oh, yeah, this is it." But this, just sort of a freaky thing in that Minnesota game. Was it wear and tear? There's just a million different questions about how an injury like
it's a
this comes about.
It's for I mean, and again, what I've read about it, for basketball players, it's jumping and landing weird, and just the way that it twists and pushes, kind of put to the outside, and as they said, that lateral pain, you just kind of bow your leg when you land a little bit, and that's what kind of does it. And it's a guy who spends half of his game jumping. I mean, it's just what he
Yeah.
does. He's constantly off his feet. You're always worried with people like that, with other things, landing funny, stepping on somebody else's foot, getting tangled up with stuff. I mean, when you spend half of your time in the air, you always have to be concerned what happens when
And
you
that's
come
sort of
down.
what looked like happened on the
Yeah.
play that most people were looking at there,
Yeah.
where he kind of came up lame a little bit after falling down, I think, on a rebound attempt there. The question
Yeah.
is, if we're waiting here, they got to get through a first round series more or less. How do you feel about their ability to sustain here? We still haven't seen it. Tonight's a good test, right? Against Bam and a bigger line there, Horford moving to center. We haven't seen a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird to, the whole year they've been playing with Rob. There hasn't
Well,
been many games without him.
what I will say is, Tice back to back has kind of played 2 of his better games, since
Mm.
he joined. I've been kind of worried because the one thing I loved about Tice, when he was here last was, I mean, he's really an athletic 6'8". He could really jump and he could really run. He did a lot of things. He just looks so much less athletic this time around. Even his putback attempts for his dunks kind of sneak across the rim. He's not finishing with the same authority. I've given up on the notion of Tice as that stretch 4 who's going to go out into the corner, drop threes. He'll take one every once in a while if he needs to. That's fine. But you just want him to be able to simulate, 60% of what Rob does. Be athletic, finish a lob or two, be able to be positionally, in the right place on defense, be able to switch on people, which he can do. He just hasn't looked great to me. He's looked a step slow. Last couple of games, he's looked a little bit better. So I get
He hasn't played a lot
you
in this
really need
year.
he hasn't. You
Yeah,
really need Tice to come in and simulate some version of what Rob gives you. The question is what you're going to do with the lineup. My guess is it's going to be Rob. I mean, it's going to be
the
Grant
Grant. Yeah,
there, which changes how they play a lot, because
it
again,
does.
how did the defense unlock? Tice simulates Rob to a far lesser degree. He's not anywhere near the player, but he's closer to what Williams does and the ability to shoot a little bit outside and generate some of his own offense and stuff like that. But defensively, he'd be closer to what Rob was trying to do. Whereas Grant is different. Grant allows you to do your switching stuff, but it really takes away that thing that unlocked the defense, which took them from like 100 defensive rating to a low 90s defensive rating, which is let Rob play free safety and just come out of nowhere and be either block a ton of shots or be a massive deterrent because he's lurking out there. And
Well,
without
you know
that,
what I looked at
it
is the
changes it changes a lot because everyone's working so hard to keep people out of the perimeter and they're switching, and it's really hard to get
yeah,
anywhere with the Celtics. And if you do, you knew Rob was waiting. And
and they've
when it's
talked about
not,
that.
it's a total game changer. Like, it's just, you can play 20 seconds of really good defense and still give up the buckets because you just don't have Rob back there as that insurance policy.
Yeah, definitely. And he was a depth switcher himself. You can go
And
at
he could
him one on
switch.
one.
Yep.
Grant, Tice, they're more susceptible to that, and the fouling with them too. This defense, an underrated part of how they've gotten where they've gotten is Rob dropping to 2 or so fouls a game and not having guys who foul much across the boards there. Grant still a 3, 4 kind of foul guy, especially if you're ramping up his minutes here.
Yeah.
And Tice, oh Lord, I mean that Toronto game, it was like 1, 2, 3, or Minnesota, I believe it was 1, 2, 3, and he's on the court. It's 6.7 fouls per 36 for Tice, which is just unreal. And I know people
Right.
think he gets a bad whistle, but you're getting the whistle you're getting with him, and he's going to be the picture here. If he's 1, 2, 3, that can derail your rotation for a game if he's coming in for some bench minutes there. So it is a tricky question because I agree with you. Tice can replicate a lot of what Rob does there at that spot. But if guys are going at him and hitting him with foul trouble early in games, your whole rotation goes out of flux there. Grant's not much better in that regard. He can front some guys better than Tice stuff, but there's a size issue there at the 4 that you didn't have before. So it's tricky. Like, those are both good options.
It's
I think they're
matchups against
both,
Cleveland. Against Cleveland,
yeah.
I don't know that you can go Grant. That's going to be a really tough one, So it
Yeah, and
depends. It
I
really
do
is
lean
matchups.
Tice. Yeah, I do lean Tice. I'd like to see them keep the rotations in place, especially with the bench playing better lately
They
with
have
Grant
been.
White and
That
those
yeah.
group.
The Grant Pritchard White bench unit that's helped like extend leads in that second quarter. You do want to see if you can keep them intact there, coming out there and playing with Tatum there.
They're gonna play different,
They've had a
and you're
lot of
right
good
about the
second quarters
matchups.
there. Yeah.
Neesmith suddenly comes into play here if you want to go smaller because he looked good. Since his return, he's looked solid, especially on the defensive end. He's starting
Again,
to look like he can play out there. But I mean, again, we're balancing Neesmith and Tice. It
Neesmith is
might be a trade-off there that's closer than you think.
Yeah, not in terms of fouls. Neesmith is wing Tice when it comes to fouls. Whether or not he just goes that extra 5% that gets him a foul that he could have easily avoided, and he does not get a kind whistle. So you've got some problems there too. But yeah, it's matchup dependent, and you are going to ask for more. You got to when you lose a key rotational piece, a key starter, everyone's got to bump up a little bit. So you're going to need more from Tice, and that means you're going to need more from one more bench player, and very likely that's going to be Neesmith. So there is a big trickle down effect here. We did see Hauser playing actual minutes and knocking down shots. So you wonder if there's a minute or two for him to be grabbed here as you kind of alter your rotations, particularly if Grant goes into that starting lineup and if you need to add some more shooting to that second unit, what you might choose to do there. But again, the bummer is you went from literally unbeatable. I mean, pretty much unbeatable to mortal very quickly because of Rob. So, from here on out and through that first round until you get Rob back and see what you've got, it's going to be tricky. And then after that, it's, wait and see with Rob. Interested if we get more information, Bobby, but we'll see. Really good opportunity again to see how they're going to do. I mean, right out of the gate, they got to go toe to toe with Miami without Rob and see what it looks like. So this is a really good taste of what it's going to look like going against a playoff caliber team without Williams. So I think Wednesday is going to tell us a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot on email right now too. And I think everybody involved across the board here, because you do have a team without Rob. But again, we're talking about going from dominance to winning. So you're still expected to win here. I think especially over a lower seed. Now, if it's Brooklyn, we have a different conversation. But Toronto, Charlotte, those type of teams, you should probably win a first round series against one of them. You just got to find the rotations, the scheme to do it in, and listen, Tatum still has to play at the level he's been at here. I think this is what most people look at right now and have confidence in is, all right, Tatum scoring 30 points a game, running this offense. That should be enough. But without Rob as a lob option and the spacing that entails, do things get a little harder on
Yeah.
Tatum too? Because listen, Horford hasn't been an offensive option for this team all year. I think we all look at Rob and say, oh, it's the shot blocking and the stealing and the defensive dominance. There's a lot he does on offense that
No, the
raises the
gravity.
offense to the next level too. Yeah. And
Yeah.
Horford, we haven't seen Horford roll all year. We've barely seen Horford post up this year. Like, he's just effectively decent pick and pop guy right now with some passing. That's what he's bringing you on the offensive end
Yeah.
right now. So that's where you do
Yeah.
start to look to Tice and Grant for some other things there.
It's the gravity of Rob and that's everything about Rob is what he does is how he gets into opponents' heads. In addition to obviously what he's able to do out there, but you always have to account for him, and that makes life easier for everybody else, both defensively and offensively. And again, so many freebies, so many ATOs that would result in lobs. Just those are just free points. Anytime anybody, you get Rob rolling and you throw it up there and it wasn't defended properly, and boom, that's just great because it takes the pressure off where you don't need to have Tatum and Brown shot creating and shot making all the time. It's nice to get some easy buckets. Rob's one of the few guys that gets them for you. So it's going to be harder all the way through for everybody.
It is.
But again,
You're
that
lucky you have
the
that Rock and Horford, though. You're
but the
really
upside,
lucky that you go to that.
yes, the upside is they were beating teams by 20 and 30 points with their starting five. I don't know that Rob is worth 20 points. So again, you have to imagine they're at least competitive. It's just nothing is certain anymore. So again, we'll see what happens Wednesday night. We're back. We've got post game show Garden Report. Make sure you check that out, and we'll kind of assess how that looks after the game. So
Miami.
again, Williams is back against Miami. Williams is back maybe as early as 4 weeks, underwent successful surgery to trim the meniscus. And that will allow for a possible return. We'll see how it goes. Rob himself tweeted that he's feeling great. Thanks for the concerns. So prayers up, Rob. We hope everything is all right. We hope he's the same guy when he comes back. And again, Celtics fans hope for an early return so this season and the turnaround can continue. But until then, until the post-game show, John Zannis, Bobby Manning, thanks for watching.